Good evening to everyone who is online. I welcome all of you to this discussion that we are having, which is specifically about the stepping aside resolution. I want to welcome my co-host, Tsepo Khadima, at the same time also our two guests that we've invited, Comrade Tony Yengeni, a member of the National Executive and of the National Working Committee of the African National Congress, and also Comrade Dali Mpofu. Comrade Dali and Comrade Tony will give us short inputs, but Advocate Mpofu has indicated that he is involved in another function in Polokwane and will not be able to be with us for the duration of this Twitter conversation. So let me make a few opening remarks, very short, about this vexed question of stepping aside. An issue that has wounded its way through the resolutions of the 54th National Conference of the African National Congress, where certain decisions were taken, decisions that were far broader and far different from the decisions that were eventually reformulated and rewritten by the National Executive Committee of the African National Congress as time went on. Unfortunately, there was a fixation with the implementation of this resolution at the cost of the rest of the very important resolution said to the judge, I'm tired of this continuing postponements. The postponements are deliberate. These charges have been brought against me for one purpose, and that was to push me aside, to get me to step aside, and when I refuse in the court is being dragged out in order to prevent me from being able to, Comrade Tony Yengeni, to please activate your mics so that I can allow you to come in as speakers. I need to get you to activate your mic so that there's a red icon which indicates to me that your mic is now activated and that I can allow you to come in as speaker to appear next to your name. So Comrade Tony and Comrade Dali, can you please activate your mics so that I can bring you in as speakers?
Okay.
I can see your mic is activated, Comrade Dali. I will bring you in now.
Thank you very much.
I want to ask Comrade Tepu Khadima to say a few short words. And Tepu, please keep it short because Comrade Dali is under time pressure. And then we will move over to Dali to give us his input. And after that, we will then move over to Comrade Tony Yengeni. Comrade Dali, can you just mute your mic again so that I can hand over to Comrade Tepu? Thank you. Tepu, you can proceed.
Thank you, Comrade Carl. I think my gratitude goes to our two esteemed speakers in Advocate Mpofu SC, as well as Comrade Tony Yengeni, and to all the listeners who are tuned in. But I think let us proceed to allow Advocate Mpofu SC to be able to say a few words, more so as he's under time pressure. But thank you very much.
Thank you, my co-moderator, Comrade Tepu Khadima. Comrade Dali, I'm giving the mic to you. Advocate Mpofu, can you unmute your mic and then please proceed to speak? Your mic is muted.
Yes, no, thank you very much, Comrade Carl. Can you hear me now?
Loud and clear.
Thank you very much, Comrade Carl and Comrade Tepu. And good evening to everybody who's part of this space. Unfortunately, as has been explained, I'm just about to start a function somewhere in Limpopo. And unfortunately, the times clashed, but Comrade Carl would not take no for an answer. So I'm going to participate, and I'm looking at the place that have not yet started. So I think I'll participate until I indicate otherwise. Yeah. Now,
and just to be clear, you are not inspecting the premises at Palapala where the auction has been started.
I was expecting that one. Everyone has been asking me if I'm sleeping over at Palapala. Yeah. And I said, no, I'm only carrying rands, unfortunately. So I won't be allowed. Right. No, I thought that what I will do is just to give a broad overview of the topic of stepping aside in relation generally to, more on the legal side of things. And then as my understanding of the ANC constitution in particular, and then of course related to some of the current events, some of the concrete examples of where that rule has been applied or misapplied, depending on where you sit. Now, I think the starting point is that just on my side, I'm quite familiar with the ANC constitution for various reasons, not just from the legal side, but also because I was part of the group that amended the current constitution significantly I think the major significant changes were done in Polokwane, and then in the other conferences there have been other changes as well. And of course, I've participated in many of the main disciplinary hearings where that constitution was torn into pieces and analyzed and reanalyzed, starting from the Malema DC and various other DCs in the provinces. But more importantly, from the legal side, was the major case of Ramakatsa versus Mahashule, where I was acting for Ramakatsa. And in 2012, we took that case to the Constitutional Court and succeeded in establishing the law that is still applied in all these party matters, not just for the ANC, any matter that really deals with political party rights of members per se. So that's just by way of situating the issue. Now, if we zoom into the step-aside issue, one has to first understand the structure of the ANC constitution and the nature of the democracy that is embedded in that constitution. There are various aspects of it, but I'll speak about the most important one, which I'm going to come back to when I deal with the specifics. And that is the inherent democratic principle that the higher structures prevail over the lower structures, if you like. So it's a pyramid or cascading type of democratic system. What that means of relevance is that a decision of the national conference is paramount. It's supreme. I think let's put it that way. And then, of course, because you cannot have a conference every time and the ANC has to make a decision, then the conference, which is the broadest representative body of the membership of the ANC, and first the decision-making powers to it elects an NEC at the conference, and then entrusts that NEC to basically babysit the organization for 5 years until the next conference. And then, of course, the National Executive Committee then becomes the highest decision-making body between conferences. But it cannot overrule a national conference. And the provincial structures that report to the NEC, the regional structures to the PEC, the branch to the region, and so on, the zone to the region. So it cascades like that. So that's the basic fundamental structure of the ANC, which is an inherently democratic organization. Now, what then happened is that the step-aside rule was really conceived, it evolved from the Mangaung conference, and it was refined at Nasrec. And at Nasrec, what happened is that it was then concretized into a resolution. And then, of course, like all resolutions, it had to be processed, by the NEC going forward. And I'm mentioning all that because I think where the problem started. Maybe let me start up front so that you know where I'm going before I even get there. Where I'm going is to say that what has happened with the step-aside resolution is that it has been hijacked and fundamentally changed, mainly for factional purposes, and therefore misapplied for those purposes rather than what it was intended for by the members. That much is clear. And it is clear that was achieved by the method of taking the resolution and then getting the NEC basically to reinterpret it And in one of the court cases, we said it was re-engineered and repurposed for completely different purpose. Now, this was done by the following method, to put it simply. The original resolution deals with people who are charged or accused or have serious allegations made against them regarding corruption and or serious crimes. I'm just paraphrasing. And that obviously encompasses a wide field of activities, of candidates, let's put it like that, of people who should step aside. So that's the mechanics of the resolution. The philosophy behind it purports to be the so-called renewal drive, and making sure that that society no longer views the ANC as being complicit in corruption and serious crimes by inaction, so to speak. But what has happened in practice is that the resolution was then changed to its current form. The first significant re-engineering exercise was to make the resolution to apply only to people who have been charged formally by the AA, so to speak. And then kind of exempt all the other categories that had been specifically named by the delegates at Nazareth, namely those who have faced serious allegations or accusations, or even reported. That's one of the words that is used. If you are reported to have been involved in those activities, then you are a candidate for stepping aside. And it was made to be mild, so that those other categories, really all they have to do is to voluntarily go to the Integrity Commission, and only if they don't give an explanation at the Integrity Commission, then they may face some consequences. So it was loosened to the extreme in respect of all other categories, and the bite was reserved for those who have been charged. Now, what is wrong with that? There are two things that are wrong with that. One is the one that I've mentioned, that it's sacrilege in the ANC that a lower structure, namely in this case the NEC, can amend a rule that has been put together by the membership, basically, at a conference. It's not done. The ANC constitution says so much. You cannot amend a resolution of the conference. Only the conference can change its own resolutions, and I think that makes logical sense. Even if people are not active in political organizations, you can understand that if there's let's say a policy set by a board of directors in a company, then the executive is there to implement it, and obviously it will fine-tune it and so on. But what it cannot do is to change it. If they want to change it, if, for example, an executive of a company finds that, no, this policy is it's good on paper, but it's impractical, they can't somehow just change it. They would have to then take it back to the board of directors, and the board of directors will consider their representations and maybe alter or say, no, we don't want to change it. So it's not it's not something that's peculiarly within the political realm. Now, so that's what's wrong with it. It's anti-democratic, and it therefore infringes on the rights of every ANC member, because anyone who joins on the basis of the constitution, which says that the conference is supreme. So that's the first thing. The second thing, which is even more important, is that what it then does, it literally takes away the powers, not just from the members of the ANC, but it takes the power of the whole organization and places it in the hands of the National Prosecuting Authority. Which is ironical, because this is supposed to be an anti-chaos capture or state capture type of mechanism. But all you need to do if you really want to escape the step aside rule is just you must capture the NPA or have some influence there, because it means you will never be charged. And if you are never charged, then you'll never have to step aside. And that's probably where we are right now with the Palapala problem, because what it really means, you might remember the current president was asked, I think last year, by journalist Juanita, who said, well, if you are charged, Mr. President, will you step aside? And if you must go and listen to that recording. He put so much emphasis on the word charged. He said his answer was, yes, of course, if I'm charged, I will step aside. Now, to me, that meant a person who knows that, quite frankly, I mean, the chances of him ever being charged for anything, even if he was found robbing a bank at gunpoint, you know, there would have to be some excuses that, no, maybe it was his identical twin or whatever. But the idea of actually charging him is something that I think if you asked 10 people in the street, just normal people, average of average intelligence, what are the chances of this NPA as it is now charging this president, I think the chances are very slim indeed. So that really defines the crisis of Palapala and all sorts of other issues, because what then happens is that depending on which faction, whether you are part of the favored faction, two things happen. A, the chances are that you'll never be charged, or if it's not a chargeable accusation that you are facing, then that the chances are that the Integrity Commission will give you a slap on the wrist and let you scot-free. So those two institutions, the proper independence of those two institutions is very important if we really are going to rely on this rule. Now, when I say we, I mean as society. Members of the NC must sort out their own democratic issues in their organization. But this notion that we as society must kind of wait when somebody says, a whole president of a country says to the nation, no, don't worry, because I'm going to go to the ANC Integrity Commission. That's completely wrong, and we should never accept it as society, because the questions that were put to him, or even when he was answering those questions, he was doing it in his capacity as an elected president of the country. What happens in his political party is his business. And therefore, we should not be satisfied by the fact that he's going to go to the Integrity Commission, even if that Integrity Commission was independent, because it would be independent within the confines of the ANC. But it is worse now when there are genuine suspicions that the Integrity Commission itself is pliable and very pliable to a particular faction, which is something to be expected in any political setting. So that's the at the level at which we're discussing this, we should, I think, maybe in terms of the discussion, examine, of course, the mechanics of the rule, whether it serves its purpose, and but more importantly, whether even if it doesn't serve its purpose, or it does within the ANC setting, whether it should be allowed to be used as an excuse, so to speak, for accountability in relation to public office per se, as opposed to the intra-party dynamics. And my answer, I mean, I'm not asking, it is an open-ended question. My answer is a definite no to that, and then we can maybe have a debate about it. Now, the final point I want to make is whether now, looking at it now from notionally from within the ANC. The ANC is going to have to, there are already noises, correctly so, as to whether this was a good idea in the first place to have a rule like this. And my answer again is that it is not, because predictably it was going to be manipulated. But what it has done actually, instead of bringing political capital to the ANC, it actually has become itself a problem and a source of internal dissent and an internal disunity. So I think it's just it was a bad mistake, because if I'm correct that it doesn't serve a societal purpose, but it also does not even serve an organizational purpose, but brings in negativity, then what is its utility? And that, I suppose that's the question that the delegates in the next ANC conference or even the policy conference are going to have to face. So let me just pause there, so that because I'm more interested maybe in some interaction before, so that maybe people can ask questions of clarity or agree or disagree with the input so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Advocate Mpofu. I see that Comrade Tony Yengeni's mic has been activated now, and I'm glad to see that. But I'm not immediately going to go over to him. I'm going to give opportunity to 3 people to come in and make some comments. But I want to ask you at this stage, and I know it's difficult to do it on these Twitter spaces because the interactions are complicated and it's not that easy to direct. But I'm going to ask you to respond specifically and especially ask questions of clarity from Advocate Mpofu before he has to leave us. Advocate Mpofu, can I ask you to mute your mic because there's background noises coming through? And then I'm going to now give an opportunity to Radebe, who has requested to speak. But please, the 3 people that I'm giving a chance to speak now, concentrate on the input that has been made by Advocate Mpofu. Radebe, I'm handing over to you. Your mic is muted, so we can't hear you. Can you unmute your mic and then speak? Okay, Radebe is not responding. His mic remains muted. So I'm going to give an opportunity to Dr. Khafela Siate to speak. I hope that you are online now. And also someone who's identified as African on point. Can you please speak? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm coming in actually. I believe that I will learn more about the happenings and maybe what is the way forward. I believe as a citizen, now I'm actually finding out from the right people. I would like to find out if ever South Africa was in a healthy democracy, what decision that maybe it can be suggested or it can be expected, despite the fact that yes, in the current circumstances that are happening. Even I've seen in one of the speech from the president where he said that it is just distractors that are trying to distract him from doing the good job of cleaning the country and fighting corruption. But I believe if there's an issue at hand that is before us, we deal with the issue, not the narrative that is actually just to have the people in your confidence. Just you deal with the issue directly, and we actually
in a position wherein
that idea that is bringing that there's distractors and so on, dealing with the evidence of the claims that are brought forward in a healthy democracy. What do we really, what can one advise that it should be happening or we should be expecting in South Africa? Thank you. I'll pause it there.
Roni, the mic is yours. Please unmute your mic.
Good evening, Comrade Carl and all the other comrades on the platform. Can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Thank you very much. Personally, I think that this is the most serious allegations to face any president post 94, in my view. But at the same time, too, I'm thinking that there's nothing that's gonna come out of this serious allegations. The president has what's the word? I'm trying to find the right word. He has admitted when he was in Limpopo, he said the amount of money is not what is being touted out there. In other words, he's saying, yes, there was some money, but it's the amount he's disagreeing with. He also goes on to say that I deal in cattle and I trade in cattle and so on and so forth. So he's admitted that he's traded in foreign currency. So if you're going to add the kidnapping and the money laundering and the other ones, then if this was the democracy that we are always told about, would have resigned already, immediately. But it looks like nothing's going to happen to him. Perhaps only those who control the means of production, they can decide to say, look, we don't want you anymore. We want another person. Until then, I don't know what's going to happen, honestly. Let me just leave it as that.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Advocate Mpofu to respond specifically to that issue. Is anything going to happen? But of course, before we go there, let me give an opportunity to Dr. Khafela Siate, who has requested the mic.
Thank you, Uncle Carl. The issue here with the step aside is that it's not applied evenly or correctly throughout the organization, because some people are more powerful than others. So I think the rule itself is not applied properly, and it should be evenly, properly, and applied to everybody else. So he himself, the president, needs to step aside until he's cleared, just like everybody else, just like Mama Zanele Gumere, Gwedemantaj, not Gwedemantaj, Comrade Mahashule and others, because it's legally that constitution is legal. So everything needs to be applied in a very legal way. So I'm not really happy on how it's been applied. It seems like the president himself is higher than others. And if it was somebody else from the other faction, we're gonna see flames. So he needs to step aside and prove that is not wrong. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker that I'm giving an opportunity to is Mayahabu Seleka. The mic is yours.
Thank you, Comrade Carl, and good evening to everyone on the space. The point to to the people's advocate, Mr. Dali Mpofu, is that I, as an ordinary citizen, I feel really insulted and disrespected that the highest office in the country would do such a thing, or there will be such a scandal or a rumor about our president, and instead of him accounting or showing some kind of interest in the story, the response that we'd get as ordinary citizen is that he will go to the integrity commission. I feel like to some extent there's that unnecessary I cannot find a better way to put it through, but there's that clash that now party politics are now being put into the highest office of a country, because as an ordinary citizen, I do not have a problem with him going to the integrity commission. But my question to the advocate is that how do we hold him accountable, or how does he remedy the situation from the legal perspective? I would like to be assisted in that regard. Thank you, Comrade Carl.
Thank you, Comrade. I think a serious issue that has come up is the manner in which the Integrity Commission is used, not as a way of keeping people accountable, and we've seen this in the past with a previous appearance of the president in front of the Integrity Commission, but rather as a way of giving him cover, in biblical terms, to provide him with a fig leaf. So that is a concern, and when we eventually go over to Comrade Tony Yengeni, I think that is an issue that we would like him to address. But now I want to hand back to Advocate Mpofu and ask him to respond to some of the questions and inputs that have been made. Advocate Mpofu, I'm not asking most people to speak now because I know you are under time pressure.
Yes. No, that's fine. I'll indicate, I might be able to take another small round, but let me try and deal with the current questions. Unfortunately, I didn't get the name of the first speaker, but the issue he was raising was quite pertinent, which was the fact that the president needs to take the nation into his confidence. I think that is a very, very important issue, and it covers some of the issues raised by the other comrades as well. Remember, we're not just dealing with an ordinary citizen here, we're dealing with the president of the country. So, and even if you looked at it in the narrow terms of the ANC, you are dealing with the president of the ANC. So in both capacities, this is a person who should be leading by example. After all, he's the one who's supposed to be the champion of the so-called renewal drive, both within his organization and in society. When he says Tumamina, he means, he now the flag bearer of the new dawn, or whatever promises were made in his name. So the expectations of the public and even of ANC members is justifiably very high when it comes to him, because this is Mr. Clean. And I think that's the problem, because now that image is going to be backfiring. I said to Judge Zondo when I was doing the matter of Province Kodan, the most fundamental problem with the so-called state capture narrative is its starting point that there are angels and there are devils. And therefore we have to these angels are untouchable, and then the devils they don't even deserve the constitution. They are so bad that, Now, once you start with that narrative, and obviously my words fell into deaf ears, because in the report we were told how wonderful it was that in Nasraq, Mr. Ramaphosa defeated the forces of evil, and so on and so on. So that evil and angel things, as Obrimachik calls it, angels with horns and devils with halos, which is a great imagery, is I think has now been completely discredited. I don't think anybody is going to be feeding us with that narrative, otherwise known as Ramaphoria, anymore. So the president owes, more than anyone else owes, to take the nation into his confidence. Then I think Ronnie raises a very, very serious issue. And this is an issue I was discussing yesterday with certain comrades, that we need to separate out these allegations and scrutinize what do we know. Of course, there's a lot we don't know, and there's a lot that needs to be investigated. Fair enough. The police will do their investigation, and whoever has to do them. But everybody, every South African citizen should sit back and say, okay, from what we know, how do we categorize what we know? In my simple way, I categorize it into two categories. There are the serious issues, kidnapping, torture, and all that. Those issues obviously have to be investigated by professional people who know how to investigate them. It must be done very fast, but it must be done. We can't just say, the president must just be lynched at the stake like tomorrow without any investigation. He's entitled, like any other citizen, to an investigation, to the matter being referred to the NPA and being charged if he's charged, and to defend himself, to be presumed innocent, and all those nice things. But you must put that on the one side. And then the other category is the stuff, as Ronnie says, that he has admitted. For me, that's the most important thing. Let's forget about the big stuff. What has he admitted? Or let me put it this way, what has he admitted? Maybe there's a third category of those things he has not denied. There's a slight difference, which I don't have time to explain. But let's start with the stuff that he has admitted. He has admitted that he did not report the matter to the police. So as far as the concealment element is concerned, that has been admitted. And I don't think even he can expect us to believe this thing that if you report something to your bodyguard or to, then it means you have reported to the police. So that's admitted. He has also admitted that some money was taken from his place. And that was an indirect admission, as when he said in Polokwane, where I am now, that the money was money which came from the sale of animals. Then it means some money was taken. So he has admitted that some money was taken. He has then said, no, it was far less than $4 million. But I mean, that's just meaningless. What is far less than $4 million? Is it $2 million, $1 million, $500,000? It doesn't matter. All of those are big amounts in their own right. So he has admitted that a large sum of money, which is not, let's just say, it's not 4 million. So I don't know whether it might be 3, it might be 2, it might be 1. We'll have to speculate because he's not prepared to tell us. So some amount of money. He has not denied that that money was in foreign currency. Okay. Now, anyone who knows how these animals, how expensive they are at these auctions, will know that even if he had said he had sold 1 or 2 of those things, then the money is at least in the tens of thousands of dollars. So whichever way you look at it, there was a lot of money in foreign currency, sitting in the president's house. And therefore, the question then is immediately, was that money reported? How did it get into South Africa in the first place? Because that involves a suspicion of crime on its own. If it got in here unregistered, that's wrong. That's a crime. By the way, one of the issues that people don't realize is that this is actually an international crime. In terms of American law, Americans being as arrogant as they are, if you commit a crime in dollars anywhere in the world, it's assumed that you are committing it in America. In other words, you are breaking American domestic law. So if he's involved in any shenanigans like that, he has not only needs to be charged here, but he's actually liable to be charged even in terms of American law. So that's the Forex issue. Was that Forex accounted for with the South African Reserve Bank? You know, and again, one doesn't have to be a lawyer for this. All of us, all of you listening here, you know, when you fly back from whatever country, you get given a piece of paper so that you can declare what amount of foreign currency you are bringing back to the country, and so on and so on. And that is for a reason, so that theoretically the Reserve Bank must know how much foreign currency is in the country at any given time. So was that done? If it was not done, well, then the next question becomes easy, which is whether tax was paid on the money. So it would clearly not have been paid. And now here comes the catch. The president said, if you remember in Polokwane, I've never stolen any money from the taxpayer. Well, if that money is, let's say it's $4 million for argument's sake. Now I don't know what the Forex tax rate is and so on, but indulge me. Let's say it's 25%. Maybe you have to pay 25% of the money to SARS. It could be 10%. I don't know. I'm just making it up here. Now, 25. I'm just using 25% because it's an easy number. It translates into $1 million. So that $1 million is whatever the exchange rate is now, 15 million rand or whatever. If that money was not paid over to SARS, then then the president is not. It's not true that he hasn't stolen money from the taxpayer, because that is money that would have had to be paid over to the taxpayer. And again, don't worry about the numbers. Just say some money, some amount of that money was due lawfully to be paid over to SARS. To the extent that that amount, whatever it is, was not paid, then the taxpayer is robbed to the tune of that amount. So, and that's a serious matter for everybody, but much more so for the president of the country, and much more so for one who parades himself as an anti-corruption crusader. So those are the issues which we need to start analyzing. Unfortunately, the media is not to be relied on this, because they are busy trying to find all sorts of deflections or just mere silence. But this is what should happen in a normal democracy. All sorts of people now talking to all sorts of experts. I should even speculating as to the percentage. By now, we should all know as a country, so much should have been paid, so much should have been declared, blah 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 blah. But that discussion is not happening because it's the favorite of the ruling class who has been caught with his hands in the cookie jar. Then there's the issue of Section 96(2) of the Constitution. Very serious matter. Section 96(2) of the Constitution, the president admits, he says, I made that money from selling animals. In 2020, he was in office. 96(2) of the Constitution says a member of the cabinet, and that includes the president, is not allowed to do any other paid work, to be involved in any other paid work. He's also not involved to breach his oath of office. And that should be, our parliamentarians should be busy, and we should be having professors and all sorts of people scrutinizing whether Section 96(2) has been breached on the admitted facts, no, not on the disputed facts. Let's leave the disputed facts to the side. On the fact that he says he was selling animals when he was also occupying the office on the very same day as he was occupying the office, which the Constitution says. And then we must look into the issues, the deeply people. Why did the founders of the Constitution prohibit members of the cabinet, including the president, from being involved in side hassles? And try and dig, and then it will be clear whether or not the president has breached his oath of office. If he has, then again, Parliament knows what to do, because there are provisions for that. Dr. Hafela talks about the rule not being applied correctly, and correctly makes the comparisons with the people who have been forced to step aside from the other faction. Now, I just want to say this. I obviously agree with him, but just as a lawyer, I have to say this. A law can be as good and well-meaning as the snow, but if the day a law loses its legitimacy, then it's no longer a law. Because if the people know, I mean, if you go to a taxi rank and you say to somebody, okay, here's there's a step aside rule, and there are two people here. One is called Ace Makashula, the other one is called Cyril Ramaphosa. Which one do you think is going to step aside or be forced to step aside? And even a child will tell you, no, this one is not going to be forced to step aside, and that one is going to be forced. Then the thing is just nonsense. It must just be thrown into a dustbin, because the public must believe that the law, as Dr. Hafela says, is going to be applied evenly. That's why we say as lawyers, the Lady Justice is blind, supposed to be blind. Once you have Lady Justice who can see whether this one is tall, this one is short, then there's no justice. And that is exactly what this so-called step-aside rule has happened. It's a discredited piece of paper, which is meaningless and just used for victimizing certain people. The last issue of I think it's my Khabo Seleka. You say, how do we hold him accountable? Well, I'll answer that. I'll just give you 5 ways by which he can be held accountable. The police, and that has already been reported to the police, and then you have to ask yourself and answer your question as to whether any police person or member of the Hawks will do a really good job in investigating a sitting president. And that's where the stepping aside issue becomes even more important to him than regional treasurer of Mkhanya Good, because that person steps aside just for the moral reasons, but the police are not scared of him or her. But the president of the country should even has a bigger reason to step aside, because which police person is going to rock up at Mahlambandlovu and say, look, I want a statement and I want it now. If he says no, but I have to go to the G20, and that police person, what are they going to do? They have to sit and wait. So that's it's more, the step aside rule should apply even higher to him. So the police. The next one is the NPA, and I mean, the less said about that, the better. Because as I said, if there's any South African who believes that this NPA can charge this president, then I'd like to meet that person without pressure, which I'll come to now. Then the third one is the public protector. Now, that's the most interesting one. Here, I can't say much because I'm involved professionally with this. But let me just say this. Of all these people who are that we are fearing might be intimidated in investigating the officer, there's only one who raised her hand, at least before the others, before the police and the NPA and so on. And what happened to her? So the message, what's the message again, it goes to this question of saying, even the president was always going to suspend the public protector. But the timing suggests to some people that this was just a form of retaliation. And that alone, whether it's true or not, is not the issue. The risk of that being true means that the others would be automatically intimidated. And that's another reason for stepping aside. And then, of course, number 4 is Parliament. Parliament, in terms of Section 89, can hold the president accountable. In fact, must hold the president accountable. And again, I hope when Parliament approaches this matter, they will do the categorization that I've done and say, okay, so that we don't get sidetracked.
Comrade Mpofu, you seem to have disappeared. In the light of Advocate Mpofu having, are you back?
Did I?
Advocate Mpofu?
Did I?
Yeah, you did,
okay.
But we have you back.
At which part?
Perhaps you can just repeat your last point.
Okay, the last point was that did I mention Parliament before I disappeared?
You were busy dealing with the issue of Parliament when you
Okay, good.
disappeared.
Yes. So I was quickly. I was saying then, I'm hoping that when Parliament does, as it must, deal with this matter, it will also adopt the categorization that I have proposed now, so that it's not waylaid into saying no, like the things that the president was saying last week in his press conference, due process, blah blah blah. Fine, let that due process continue with the stuff that is in dispute, and it must be investigated. But there's no due process when you have admitted things. That's enough due process. So if Parliament can say, okay, we'll only deal with the stuff that you have admitted to, selling in breach of Section 1996 2B, having forex in the country, and not reporting. Let's just deal with those, and the other stuff will be dealt with later. That would be enough, in my estimation. That would be just the admitted stuff is enough to impeach him, but of course there's politics and the votes, 2/3 majority, and all that. And then the most important of those, I said the police, number 1, the NPA, number 2, public protector, number 3, Parliament, number 4. The one that is always forgotten, the people. There is no mechanism that will make the president to account of all these things I've mentioned put together. If the people want him to account, he will account tomorrow. And that is a challenge to those of you who are activists, who are able to mobilize society and so on. Because if the people, I'm exaggerating for effect, if 1 million people go to the Union Building tomorrow and sit there and say, we want you to tell us how much money was there and so on, then that will happen. All these other shenanigans and structures of which can be influenced will be nullified. Because after all those structures, the police, the NPA, the public protector, and Parliament, are structures not of the people who are there, but structures of the people, the citizens, you and me. So we have to find a mechanism, and I hope even after I've left this platform, there will be a few minutes dedicated to that discussion. What must be done by the people of South Africa? Not ANC members, not EFF members, not this or that, just the people themselves to ensure, because after all, the man was elected by the people as a whole, and therefore they must demand accountability. Thank you.
Thank you, Advocate Mpofu. Can you mute your mic?
Sure.
I think one of the points that you made that is absolutely critical is this thing that the president says he had not stolen any money. And yes, no one had categorically stated that he had stolen money, but at the same time, the point that you made is absolutely correct. If you do not pay your taxes, if you do not declare your income, if you contravene international forex regulations, you steal from the people. It is as simple as that. On the issue of the NPA, of course, the president decides and selects and appoints the head of the National Prosecuting Authority. So Advocate Batoy will be fundamentally conflicted in terms of having her one eye, of course, on her job to deal with this matter. And I think ultimately the point that you make, and it's so critical, is the issue of the people and getting the people of South Africa with our feet on the pavements, on the tarmac, registering our outrage and demanding that action should be taken against President Ramaphosa. Although you said, Advocate Mpofu, that you could take a few more questions, I do not want to delay bringing Comrade Tony Yengeni in, because I think at this point he will help to enrich the discussion, especially around that point that you also made of the politics and the representativity of this issue amongst the people, not just ANC members, but people in general. So I want him to come in. If you're able to stay and comment on what he says, and some other comments will be good. If you're unable to do so, and this platform doesn't allow you at any stage just to budge in, I want to thank you at this point for your presence and for your participation. We are truly grateful, and as you said, when I first approached you, I didn't want to accept a no, and I'm glad that you were prepared to accept that insistence from me, that we needed your wisdom in this conversation.
No, thank you very much, Comrade Carl, and I must apologize again to everyone. It's not out of any disrespect. Actually, I'm not disrespecting my hosts here, but I'll go I'm sure I'll get part of the second course or something. But what I will do, obviously, I will try and get the recording so that I listen to the rest of the input. And if there's a need for us to have a second round, we will arrange it with Comrade Carl. But thank you for listening, and sorry that I have to leave. I'm signing out now. Thank you.
Thank you, and once again, thank you for your invaluable input. And yes, I think we will have a further bit of space on this issue of Palapala and the president's responsibility within that context, talking about the need for the president to step aside and actually do more than that. So this is not the last time that you will have the opportunity, so to speak.
Yes, Comrade Carl, Comrade Carl, maybe let me just make one small point, which is that we are in a crisis, people. We really need wisdom, and that's why I'm going to get a recording of this so that we can hear what none of us have got any special wisdom on this. But one thing for sure, we're in a crisis. As we were in a crisis when we were facing the apartheid regime, we have a serious situation where the judiciary is in a shaky position for various reasons that I don't want to get into now. The legislature is in a very precarious position. We saw what happened last week, and and rightfully so. The members of parliament were demanding answers, and the executive at the head. They say a fish rots from the head. The executive is in a crisis. And I'm sure even when they sit in a cabinet meeting, the specter of Palapala is all over that big room. So that means all the less said about the media, the better. But all the structures of society are in some kind of crisis, and that means we, the people, should do something, whatever it is, and not necessarily mortgage that task to politicians or political parties or NGOs, but all of us, the church, the business, whatever, all civil society should now be speaking with one voice, as we once did in the 80s when we were called upon to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Advocate Mpofu. And on that note of that we are in a serious crisis, and therefore we need to respond to that crisis adequately, I want to hand the mic over to Comrade Tony Yengeni to give us his input. And from there, we will then proceed to invite more of you as speakers. Comrade Tony, the mic is yours.
Thanks, Comrade Carl, and good evening to yourself and everybody else. Good evening, comrades. I think that Comrade Dali has said a mouthful on both the issue of step aside and the Palapala scandal. From a point of view of constitutionality and even legally, and even politically to a large extent, because though Dali is a lawyer by profession, he is also a political animal. So he has made my job easier in this discussion. And I must thank Carl and his colleagues for having invited me to participate in this debate. I'm sincerely humbled by that invitation. My wish is that we can have these debates regularly. And I was impressed the first time I came to this platform last week to note that the quality of debate was very high, and even the representation of people on the platform was very impressive. And so I think I want to thank all those that are responsible for having initiated this platform and this debate. It's very important in any democratic environment to have many voices speaking out, sharing views and opinions, and refusing to keep quiet and to be silenced by anybody, including the state. And so this to me represents to some extent, defiance of the status quo, which seeks to silence those that have different opinions. I had a small debate with Comrade Carl when he asked me to participate in this debate about the topic. And I was saying to him, yes, step aside is an important question to be talked about, but I hope it's not going to take the minds of our people away from the current political scandal that is engulfing the president. And I think the debate thus far today has shown me that actually it is correct that most of the debaters on this platform are still very much, aggrieved by this Palapala scandal, and they want to express their views, and they want more information, and they want something to happen around this matter. To begin this discussion from my point of view, The ANC has always been a broad church for the longest time. And because of that reason, there's always been major debates within the ANC about all sorts of things. And
Comrade Tony, you have disappeared. I hope you will be able to come back as quickly as possible. Unfortunately for now, we seem to have lost the connectivity with Comrade Tony. I hope that we will be able to get him back as soon as possible. But perhaps this is an opportunity to give to my co-moderator, Comrade Tsepo Khadima, an opportunity to make an input. I see Comrade Tony has now fallen off the platform, so I hope he will be able to come back. But in the meantime, I want to give Comrade Tsepo Khadima, my co-moderator, an opportunity to refer to the issues that have been raised by Advocate Mpofu, and I think also the very appropriate introduction that had already been made by Comrade Tony when he said that first and foremost, in the minds of our people now, even when we talk about this question of stepping aside, is Palapala, because it also raises with us the fundamental contradiction on how certain people are being treated, such as Comrade Ace Magashule, the Secretary General of the African National Congress, and how others are being protected, and the problems that we are faced with regards to our judicial system, our law enforcement agencies, and as Comrade Dali quite correctly say, not even to speak about the kind of conduct of the mainstream media. Comrade Tsepo, do you want to come in? And then in the meantime, we try to bring Comrade Tony back so that he can proceed with his very important input. The mic is yours.
Thank you, Comrade Carl, and good evening once again to the participant on this Twitter space. Look, I think the issues that have been well articulated specifically by Mpofu SC should worry each and every one of us, because the question that arises is that, is the President of the Republic not incapacitated as a direct result of the serious allegations that have been made, and more so taking into account that he has already admitted to quite a number of those allegations, and also taking into account that evidence has been adduced to corroborate and support the allegations that have been leveled not only against him, but against persons that also serve him in their capacity in terms of as work for the state and not working for him personally. So now the issue that arises is that, is it possible even that we could even be contemplating as a nation a situation as we now are, whereby the law enforcement agencies, the criminal justice system, we are even contemplating whether it is not itself incapacitated or captured to certain specific or special interests. And God forbid that we should be in such a situation, which unfortunately we are. Now, that being the case, the question that arises is that with these crimes that are alleged to have been committed, actually being of international nature, whereby other countries, whether you're talking about the Department of Justice in the United States of America or in terms of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act violations, taking into account that a U.S. property in the form of a American dollar is involved in the crimes that have been committed. And also in terms of the Financial Action Task Force, which South Africa is a member of, and Financial Action Task Force headquartered in Paris, in France, whose other activities or purpose for existence include that of combating of money laundering, because money laundering by its very nature undermines the international financial system, and that is effectively the enemy for economic growth and freedom anywhere else. Taking into account all of these things into account, one can't help but think of the expression that has been founded in history during the Roman Empire, even though it dates back to even to biblical times, the principle of falling on one sword. And that arises of the fact that if you fall on your sword, you would be kind to yourself, lest you be then punished by others who would then go to the extreme of making it worthwhile for you. Why am I saying that? Is that it is astonishing, to say the least, that the seriousness of the charges that the president and the people around him that effectively are facing, it appears that he has been facetious about such charges, and he has been sanguine about such charges. And hence, he's now driving citizens to ask questions such as what Mpofu SC has articulated, that of saying we, the people, have to do something else because all other state institutions are now, they have failed. And state institutions in terms of not only the legislature, not only the judiciary, but the executive as well. And taking into account that the executive in this case, on numerous occasions, seems to have usurped power from what would have been independent institutions such as the National Prosecuting Authority, as well as the South African Police Service, which are supposed to be independent and not subject to the control or to do the bidding for whoever is the executive. Now, that being the case, if this country can afford a situation where now the citizens, the activists have to rise up to have to try and bring in the rule of law or ensure that the rule of law lives for many people, it simply means that if the institutions, state institutions in either the criminal justice system and as well as the judiciary seemingly are constrained or incapacitated, then the people are going to resort to self-help. And self-help is itself anarchy. And once you are dealing with a situation of anarchy, the question becomes, what standing will this country have anywhere else in the world in terms of other countries that we, or multilateral institutions? The question is South Africa today in good and regular standing, taking into account the charges that have been leveled, both at the United Nations, because we've got the United Nations Human Rights Commission, and we have allegations here of persons having been abducted, have been renditioned, and have been tortured, and that the United Nations has to have interest. Now, when the allegations are that the head of state, no less, appears to have either condoned or abated or being an accomplice in commission of such heinous crimes, what standing will this country have at such a multilateral institution such as the United Nations and a whole host of others within either SADC or within the African Union and elsewhere? And if that is the case, is it possible that therefore the man can continue to hold position? And I submit that his position has become totally untenable. But what will it take for him to understand and to remember the oath of office that he took, to then have to do the rightful thing, that is, fall on your sword. And I do also want to submit that step aside is actually not a uniquely or exclusively ANC concept. Step aside is a global concept, because it means that a person must rather withdraw or resign from an important position, that important position, particularly when there are allegations of abuse of power, as currently is the case, in order to ensure that the rule of law must reign supreme, which is one of the tenets of the Constitution. So if we were to say we are in a crisis as a nation, I don't think that that word crisis even adequately describes the real, what the Afrikaners would call groot gemors, that we are in as a nation. And should that situation not be brought to a timely end, it then means that all other freedoms that we require, whether freedom of trade, freedom of association, freedom of speech, freedom of everything else, all of those freedoms that were really grew out of the tree of liberty that was watered with steel and blood. Unfortunately, that tree is going to die, the tree of liberty. And vigilance is the price of freedom, or eternal vigilance is the price of freedom that we have to pay. Hence, it is important for every South African to be vigilant and ask the hard questions, regardless of who the hard question is directed towards, whether they like that person or not. Thank you very much, Comrade Carl.
Thank you, Comrade Tepu. I'm offline trying to talk to Comrade Tony. I'm getting the impression that he has deliberately been removed and that he is now being blocked from coming back onto this platform. Well, I suppose we should not be surprised. We are going to be sabotaged all along the way. Comrade Tony will continue to try and come back. And Comrade Tepu, as my co-moderator, while I'm busy looking here at all the requests and activating them, can you please keep an eye open, and as soon as you see Comrade Tony appearing back on the platform, even if we are in the middle of another contribution, can you please alert me and assist me so that we can immediately bring him back online? We need his wisdom. We need the inputs that he was still going to make. And we specifically need to hear what Comrade Tony is going to tell us about what needs to happen inside the National Executive Committee and National Working Committee of the ANC. We know that he fought a lonely fight at the last National Working Committee meeting of the ANC, where he was viciously attacked for raising these pertinent issues. And if it wasn't for his courage and the manner in which he stood up, there would not even have been a decision by the National Working Committee that there have to be a report back on this issue of Palapala by the next meeting of the National Working Committee. And of course, as I said earlier, then there was this proposal by those who are the supporters of President Ramaphosa that he should go to the Integrity Commission, which is evidently an attempt to simply provide cover to him. But let us now continue to give other members of our group who are here on this platform an opportunity to speak while we keep our eye open for Comrade Tony to join us immediately when he manages and if he manages to get back onto this platform. I see that Comrade Nkoshisensha Shezi has requested the mic, and I would like to hand it over to him. Comrade Shezi, your mic is muted. I hope you are still online. If you are, can you unmute? We're looking forward to hear from you. Unfortunately, Comrade Shezi is not unmuting his mic. Perhaps he's also no longer online. But I'm going to give an opportunity to Mo Munganyi, who has requested the floor to speak. Mo, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, comrade. Thank you very much. I wanted to ask Mr. Mpofu on when he was breaking down the law and the charges and regarding the Palapala issue. I wanted to ask him a question regarding the kidnapping and the assaults that happened at the farm, as to was, according to the information they have as EFF, was Ramaphosa present during the kidnapping of the suspects and the torturing of those suspects? Because it will then mean, if he was present, there's more charges that must be pressed towards him. So that was my question. That is what I wanted to ask him. I think since he said he will listen to the recording, and when he comes back on the second round, I would like him to answer that. That's all.
Thank you, Comrade Mo. I think the critical issue here is that President Ramaphosa apparently, from what we can gather, gave instructions to the head of the Presidential Protection Team to carry out all kinds of actions, all of which, as one look at them, were illegal, because nowhere was there ever registered officially with the South African Police Service that a robbery, that a crime had been committed. So under the circumstances, someone like Major General Wally Rode acted entirely outside the law. And his involvement in kidnapping and torture then relates directly, and I'm trying to answer not as a lawyer, but more as a layman, but at least someone who has some logic, relates directly to the powers that had been given to him and the instructions that had been given to him by his principal, which is President Ramaphosa, under all circumstances. So in that context, I think whether President Ramaphosa was present at the farm when these acts of torture and whatever else happened there occurred, he still can be held legally liable for an instruction that had been given. And I don't think any of us can fool ourselves that he was not aware of what was going on. We can be very sure that Major General Rode would not have done anything without his authority and his instruction. And there is therefore not a situation here that he can argue that he's plausibly not aware of what has happened. I see that Nkoshisensha Shezi has managed to get back onto the platform, and I'm handing the mic over to him. Comrade Shezi.
Thank you very much, Comrade Niehaus, and thank you very much, Comrade Tsepo. It is really a pleasure to be in this platform in front of all the listeners and the activists that are on this platform. I'm especially grateful for the manner in which Comrade Advocate Dali Mpofu outlined all the shenanigans that happened in Palapala Farm. And, I'm especially intrigued with the issue that he raised, that just the admission that he made that there was some money that was paid to buy the animals that he says he sells in that farm is good enough for him to be prosecuted, to be charged and prosecuted. And indeed, once a suspect admits a crime, I don't think there should be any other delays in terms of processing that criminal. Comrade Carl, I am especially grateful to you for the manner in which you keep at this platform and explain step by step. And we are also even looking at are these charges enough? Are there any more charges to be added upon what we normally know as the breaking of the law that took place in Palapala farm? But let me say I am really getting angry, and at the same time I just don't know if South Africans are really noticing what has just happened. We cannot allow a state president, more especially Cyril Ramaphosa, who campaigned and fooled all of us to believe that he is someone who's clean, someone who's going to come in and fight corruption, someone who instigated the removal of the people's president, someone who really let millions of people of South Africa down and plunged our country into darkness, literally and figuratively, if you remember what happened in Eskom and elsewhere. But my problem and my challenge is, as Advocate Mpofu was explaining all the rules and the laws that were broken by Cyril Ramaphosa, yes, we have a legal recourse, but what legal recourse do we have under this current judicial system? Is it not Cyril Ramaphosa who admitted the Bosasa saga? Is it not Cyril Ramaphosa who wrote an email that ultimately got 34 workers butchered and massacred in front of the whole world on national television? What has happened to Ramaphosa? Nothing. We are going to carry on and speak and analyze on this space up until Ramaphosa comes up with total lockdown of this country and forced vaccination and turn us into zombies. I think now it's a time for each and everyone who's self-respecting to act. There is no court of law in this country that is going to remove Ramaphosa. There is no commission in the ANC that is going to hold Ramaphosa accountable for the crimes that he committed against the people of South Africa. There's nobody who's going to question him for the theft, for the thuggery that he has conducted in that Palapala farm. It's about time that ordinary men and women of this country, if you believe in yourself and if you believe that this country belongs to you, and if you love justice, and if you think any criminal should be confronted, let us unite forces. Let us take out the criminal, Cyril Ramaphosa. We cannot allow a criminal to rule over our lives and still command the law enforcement and still sit upon the throne where even the sitting Chief Justice was appointed by him. The judges in the Constitutional Court are even alleged to be part of the CR17 bank statement. And in fact, that statement even today has never been unsealed. And if we miss this opportunity, it's going to be weeks, months, and years without Cyril Ramaphosa facing his music. Comrade Carl Niehaus and all the listeners and all the comrades, I think it is about time now that we come into these spaces, we devise a method and we set a date that on this date, nothing is going to move in South Africa. We're going to hold Cyril Ramaphosa accountable. In fact, we are going to demand for him to step down because he's messing up our country. He has messed it up enough. Thank you very much, comrades. And we have a duty for our kids and for the next generations to remove Cyril Ramaphosa from the ANC and from the government of this country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Comrade Nkoshisensha Shezi. I think we can all applaud what you have just said. What we do need to understand is we do not have a parliament and institutions that have a moral compass. It is evident when we look at the conduct of most of our members of parliament and the vast majority also of members of parliament of the African National Congress, if we look at the conduct of our judicial system and our law enforcement agencies, that we've lost our ideological and moral compass. So if we have lost that compass, how can we force those who are supposed to act of their own volition and on the basis of the oaths that they have laid down in service of the people of the country, they can only be brought to book, they can only be dealt with by the people. Therefore, we need to mobilize the people. And that is what has to be done. As I said earlier, we need to have feet on the pavements and on the tarmac. We have to have people protesting. We have to get the message into those blocked ears and thick skulls of our members of parliament and of the National Executive Committee of the African National Congress, that if you do not act, you will go down with Ramaphosa. He will have to face the music, and your lack of action and your unpreparedness to act in terms of the trust that had been given to you through the democratic processes that brought you to the positions in parliament and elsewhere. That same trust that the people had given will turn into wrath and into anger. And as he is being removed, you will be removed. And together with him, you will have to face the music. I'm now going to give an opportunity to someone who's identified as Spaces Creatively. And the mic is yours. Unfortunately, Comrade Tsepo Khadima, we are failing to get Comrade Tony back online. He's just indicated to me that every time that he's trying to join, his phone is being kicked out. We will try other ways of getting him back on. Comrade Tsepo, if you can, perhaps you can give him a call, discuss with him other ways in which, for instance, Reg Nkosi, when something similar happened to him, was able to get back onto the platform. I'm now giving the mic to Spaces Creatively. Please unmute your mic, and then the floor is yours.
Good evening, Mr. Niehaus and your co-host. Good evening to everyone. I think for me, it's just that I think the one point that I want to make is obviously echoing the sentiments of the previous gentleman, but that there's power on social media as well. I'll make a reference to that recent issue around the flag, where people actually joined forces in making that whole thing trend, and they put pressure onto that department and that minister to actually act. We don't know, obviously, behind closed doors, if whatever that statement was made, if it's going to be followed through on. But I think just mobilizing actually can start here. It can start online, it can start on Twitter. Why aren't we making the hashtag Ramaphosa must fall? If we all feel the same, obviously, or whoever feels the same, I feel the same. This whole thing happened in 2020 during lockdown. Well, it's alleged to have happened during that time, and obviously since then until now, we've seen how our economy has dwindled, how many jobs have been lost, how the unemployment rate has gone up. There's just a whole lot of things that have happened since then. And to learn that our president had millions and millions of money stashed in his property, to learn that he has been engaging in other business activities as a sitting president. This is the first time in South Africa that we've had a sitting president, because obviously when he came in, excuse me, there were always questions about whether he was going to leave his business activities aside, and he
Can
made
I interrupt you for a second?
Yes.
Comrade Tsepo Khadima, can you please assist me to look through the people who are on the platform? Comrade Tony tells me that he's back in, but I can't see him. And I want to give him that opportunity before he gets kicked off. So you can continue to speak. I'm so sorry for having interrupted you. In the meantime, we're going to try and bring Comrade Tony back in as soon as we can. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't mind once he's active or however way. I'll just mute my mic. But what I was saying is that I think we really need to be cognizant of the time frame that this whole thing has happened within, and how we have been affected by everything that has happened. Obviously, we didn't have a choice. We were forced to go on lockdown. You know, a lot of people lost their income. A lot of businesses closed down because of that. And to learn that we had a sitting president, like I was saying, that it was for the first time that we had a president who has carried on to be active in other economic activities other than his duty of being the president of the country, and has carried on to be active in other business interests whilst he's a sitting president, and continue to make money on the side, you know, in a foreign currency, know-how. So we need to be cognizant of that, and we need to be aware of that whilst we are mobilizing and whilst we are shouting about the fact that he needs to step down. And I think the last bit of contribution that I wanted to make is that we should make this trend. And if we are able to make celebrities trend and to make other unimportant matters trend app on a daily basis, there's nothing stopping us to actually make this trend, whilst physical and physical mobilization is happening or is being prepared, or whatever is happening in the background. We can actually make a trend on this app and just exercise whatever apparatus we have on our hands to actually raise our voices on this matter, whilst we continue to also engage on it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I fully agree that we must use all the opportunities also on social media, but social media has to eventually translate into action amongst our people for mobilization and for a continuation of mobilization in the streets. That's why we've launched the campaign that people should go to the police stations, lay supporting charges at their police stations, but also plan for marches to the union buildings, to the NPA, to all the various institutions, the South African Reserve Bank, South African tax authorities, all of them that are implicated and that should act and are sitting on their hands with regards to these crimes that have been committed. Comrade Tsepo, can you indicate to me if you're able to find Comrade Tony? I'm quite hectically trying to go through all the thousands of people who are participating. I haven't yet found him. Did you find him, Comrade Tsepo? Well, unfortunately, it seems that Comrade Tsepo's mic is now also not functioning, but we will not allow ourselves to be prevented from continuing with this discussion. I see that Khoisan has requested the mic, and I'm going to hand it over to him. Khoisan, the mic is yours.
Yeah, hello. Thanks for the opportunity. Greetings to everybody. Thank you, Carl. Thank you to the co-host and everybody that is listening. I'm a new person coming from Soweto. I've got a few questions to ask, and also they are in a form of a comment. Is that what happens after these shenanigans that have been exposed, or rather the idiocy of Cupcake? Because as far as I'm concerned, he won't get through this one. and what happens next, who takes over from him? Has it been thought through to say after this guy who will be in charge, and is it the current deputy? Is he suitable to take that position? Because for me, the ground is fertile for change, and it gives South Africans an opportunity to really look at the core problem, or rather the core problems that are derailing our people from attaining true liberations. And as far as I'm concerned, that's the word monopoly capital, the fact that our country is still a colony of that despicable royal empire in Europe, and Cupcake he's not a core problem. He's just, when you look at the at issues, when you look at the core effect, sorry about that, he's just an effect. And we as proud South Africans sit down and look at the problem and say, okay, cool. Is this man really our problem, or is it the handlers, or what monopoly capital, whatever they attempt, are they the real problems? Because if we continue looking at the effect, we will continue having the same debate over and over and over again, because whoever that is going to replace this guy will also be controlled by this empire system that is the real problem of our people. Is there a need to relook at the Congress agreement? Those people that were there, why are they secretive? Why is it that an ordinary person cannot know what was agreed upon? What were the compromises there? Is the current constitution favorable, or is it a real constitution for the real people of South Africa, or was it designed by capital to protect capital so that capital can continue ruling the government? It is said that in other progressive states, government controls capital, whereas here we have seen so much that capital controls government by all means necessary. Less is said about the NASREC conference. We know who sponsored them. We know that Cupcake didn't win that battle. We know that money was flying all over the show. Hence, the CR17 records were sealed. Ordinary people on the street are not stupid. And I've personally warned the ANC, I think back in 2017, 2018, that internet was going to show them flames, most especially social media. And they thought I was a fool. And what is happening now is exactly what I predicted is going to happen. They think they can continue, I'm sorry for using French, fucking around the people of South Africa with hope, or rather with this dubious or idiotic assumption that people will forever continue voting for them. But we have to understand that the glorious movement has been captured by capital. The judiciary has been captured. The entire governmental systems have been captured by this capital, and we have to give it to them and understand where the root problem started, even before the Codesa fiasco. Back in the 80s, during Lusaka, when capital went to Lusaka and started negotiating with the African National Congress in Lusaka, whilst OR was still alive. And their plans have matured. Their plan, what they planned 10 years before, has taken place. We are just reacting to the outcome of what they've planned. So our people need to sort of go to the proper planning and plan for true freedom. We need to liberate our country and our people away from the clutches of not only this capital, but from the colony of the Royal Empire. Because if we really love our country, not only South Africa, but the entire continent of Africa, we need to step up the fight against the European system. It is what is causing havoc. And do you think they are not planning the next move when Cupcake is not here? They do. There are signs of even comrades that are trusted, who they are starting to promote. It's becoming very, very clear. And if and when Cupcake goes, whether it's before the conference, end of the year, who's going to take over? Is it the current sitting deputy? Is he fit to run our country? Isn't he compromised? Aren't his sins in the public domain? What are the real solutions? Is there a way of, people that really love our people, love the peace and prosperity of our land for the benefit of our children and future generation? Try to sort of adopt a mentality that says, let's be brave and go back to the drawing board and request I call it the CODESA 2, where people beyond party politics, they need to sit down and say, we really need our own independent African or South African constitution that is going to govern us based on our rules, not anyone's rules. Because we'll be running circles and debating these things all over again for years and years to come. So the only way, I think, and I have said this in one of the spaces where Mr. Mpofu was chatting, was for politicians and to look beyond party politics. Go beyond ANC, EFF, PAC, AZAPO. There has to be some sort of unity for our people to be able to defeat this white monopoly capital, otherwise we're wasting time. And I so wish that maybe one day, Mr. Karl, that there is a space where the topic will be that in particular, that can there be a reset? Can we truly talk about what happened in CODESA? What's been hidden, and what are the legal ramifications of doing away with this current constitution so that we can come up with a proper constitution that will represent the majority of our people. That is my submission. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Hassan. And I think the issue about what happened at CODESA and even what happened before CODESA is of absolute importance to us, because it is evident that our beloved liberation movement, the African National Congress, had been infiltrated by the agents of white monopoly capitalism and imperialism even long before the ANC was unbanned, and that there was a long-term plan to determine the kind of constitution that was eventually negotiated. And of course, at the head of that process was Cyril Ramaphosa. He was part of that plan. He was particularly positioned to do what he had to do, and he continues now to execute that plan with devastating consequences for all of us in South Africa. So there can't be any doubt that Cyril Ramaphosa must go. And one of the previous speakers suggested that we should have a hashtag to trend to say that Ramaphosa must fall. As you know, there is a hashtag that has been going for quite some time, Ramaphosa must go. And we should push that hashtag as hard as possible. But of course, as I've said numerous times on this platform tonight, social media only can take us thus far. Beyond that, we need to mobilize to get our people to act on the ground to register their opposition in terms of their real physical presence on the streets to protest, to remove this man and what he stands for. Comrade Tsepo Khadima, you seem to be blocked. I can see you on the Twitter space, but I don't get a response from you. I'm going to try and see if you can respond. If you can't, we will have to move over to the next speaker. In the meantime, Comrade Tony still seems not to be available. Comrade Tsepo, can you talk? I hear someone speaking, but I can't see who it is.
Yeah, it's a question. So the question is, what next? He goes, Cyril goes. What next? Who's next in the line? And is there a plan? Like you said, the enemy is well organized. They plan far ahead. We are dealing with the current problem. We're not looking forward. What next? Is it DD? Isn't he compromised? That's the question that I'm asking.
And the immediate answer in terms of the constitution is that if President Ramaphosa leaves tomorrow, constitutionally, the deputy president will then take that position. The questions that you ask around the credibility of Didi Mabuza are very valid, and there are issues of serious concern. I think what we need to say is that the mobilization of our people, again, as I said, throughout the country, and specifically also the mobilization of the members of the African National Congress at branch level in all the various structures of the ANC, to mobilize to have as soon as possible a national emergency elective conference of the African National Congress, where leadership different from the current compromised leadership that we have can be elected, that are representative of the will of the people. I still maintain that the majority of grassroots members of the African National Congress are with us, that they disagree with the kind of policies that are now being implemented, that they do not accept what President Ramaphosa and those sellout National Executive Committee members that he had brought into those positions through the monies that he spent at the 54th National Conference are implementing. So it is a process of mobilizing so that we can have an urgent national elective conference where we elect a new leadership, where the newly elected National Executive Committee of the African National Congress can then proceed to appoint a new president and a new cabinet, and can act in the interest of the people as a National Executive Committee that expresses the will of the people and have not been bought through brown envelopes. But all of that is only going to happen if our society as a whole, not just ANC members, mobilize, push for that to happen, and ANC members also realize that there's a broad groundswell, in fact, a tsunami from the people of the country who demand this kind of change. Comrade Tsepo, can you hear me? I'm afraid Comrade Tsepo is now also no longer online, but I'm going to ask another Tsepo, Tsepo Busoga, who is requested to speak, to take the mic and address us.
Evening, comrades. Thank you, Carl. From my side, I believe that I'm actually disappointed with us as South Africans as a whole to have a sitting president being accused of money laundering, whereby he is the first person who should be protecting our constitution. We cannot be dealing with other issues, maybe, for an example, the foreign issues, where our president is taking a foreign currency into the country in an amount that cannot be accounted, you see. So that is what I'm saying. I am very, very much disappointed with us as South Africans, because by now we should be in a position whereby we are marching we put everything in South Africa to stand still so that we deal with the issue of the president, because at the end of the day, it affects all South Africans. We are the ones who are suffering, who are ordinary South Africans. They are dealing with a large amount of money that benefits themselves and their families. What about the ordinary South Africans who are sitting there in the elections? You understand? So for us to move on, we can have the spaces at all times, talk about the issues of the country and the constitution. It is a system that will always be bypassed by the highest power, because by so doing, they are showing that they've got power. The man has admitted in Polokwane that he had money, a foreign currency in his farm. So what else? The man has to step aside. And also the comrades within the ANC, we are actually disappointed, because there is a group, a faction that is supporting Ramaphosa, and there is others who are opposing him. But now, what about the interest of us as South Africans? You know, after this accusation, this reminded me about the case against our former president Zuma, when there was accusation regarding the rape. So did you see the pressure that was put on an old man to say, you have raped a woman? He was called names. But now this guy, who's the sitting president as we speak, he's got more than $4 million in his farm. He admits that the money was stolen, but it was not reported. We need to act as South Africans. We need to stand firm and make sure that, because now we are the ones who are going to suffer. Our generation, our kids are going to suffer if we don't fix the country for ourselves. Then now, what is the way forward? Yes, we are talking that he must step aside. Who's coming? The next president who's coming? Yes, of course, Constitution says it's Didi Mawuza. Also, is he fit enough to have the interest of the people of South Africa? That's the question we should be asking ourselves. Because for every president that is take that, is going to have an interest of the people of South Africa, not to serve their own selfish benefits. I think I just have to pack it there and give others an opportunity to participate. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I think the points that you made, Tsepo, are very well taken. It is evident that if we want to be a self-respecting society, if we want to be a law-abiding society, if we want to be a society that has its status restored in the international community, Cyril Ramaphosa must go. I see that we finally managed to bring my co-moderator, Tsepo Khadima, back on board. Tsepo, I want to give you an opportunity. I don't know how many of the inputs that we have received during the last while you were able to hear, because you're for a while off the platform. But I do want to give you an opportunity to come in at this stage, give us some direction. You're usually very good in terms of coming up with practical suggestions. I hear a thirst, a need from the participants on this Twitter Spaces to know and to ask, what can we do? This cannot continue. We feel desperate that it is important now that the right actions be taken so that we can see the consequence of Cyril Ramaphosa being removed as president of this country. Tsepo, I'm giving the mic to you.
No, thank you, Comrade Carl. I think one point I wanted to emphasize is that it is not just an issue of wanting the President Cyril Ramaphosa to step aside, step down, whatever, because either we don't like him or for whatever reason. We are dealing with serious matters here. In the Muslim language, I would say it is totally haram to have a president who can be accused of money laundering, abduction of citizens, rendition of persons who are not even suspects, to have them being interrogated and tortured, not even in police cells, but in a private house, to then be a confession to be forced out of them. And bearing this in mind, and I've made this point before, I want to underscore it. One Radovan Kresha is serving 35 years in jail for a serious crime of torture and abduction. And even the issue at hand of the evidence of drugs did not even matter. The moment there was that charge of abduction or kidnapping and torture, that is what earned him the 35 years in jail, because it is an exceedingly serious criminal act. Now, somebody somewhere has to be charged. The police, the National Prosecuting Authority, actually, in this instance, they have to be reminded of the oath of office, whereby they have to act without fear, favor, or prejudice. And the case, as has been put before them, they are duty bound, they are compelled. It's not an issue of a discretion. Somebody somewhere has to be arrested on the basis of the evidence that has been provided by none other than Arthur Fraser and corroborated by other persons. But lastly, in terms of direction where we need to go, it appears to me that with the skepticism that many South Africans hold towards the law enforcement agencies, as well as the judiciary, as well as the legislature, it appears to me that a campaign has to go beyond the borders of South Africa to the Department of Justice in the United States, as well as to the Financial Action Task Force in Paris, as well as the United Nations itself, in terms of the crimes that are alleged to have been committed here, more so because of the persons and the position that they hold in the state of South Africa, that therefore these crimes have to be prosecuted beyond the borders, because it is indisputable that when a president is accused in the manner and of such serious crimes as we currently have, the law enforcement agencies would, within reason, have some hesitation. And that hesitation, the remedy therefore means that we have to go and have these cases prosecuted beyond the borders of this country. And maybe that is a campaign that we also need to consider very seriously, that this case must go beyond. But all of this would not be necessary if the president can tomorrow morning announce that he's leaving office in order to be able to clear the very serious allegations that or charges, because these are criminal acts that he's been accused of, that actually to go and deal with those. All of these other things of even going internationally would not be necessary, because it would induce more harm on the state of South Africa if the contemplated action at the Department of Justice in the US, the Financial Action Task Force in Paris, as well as the United Nations, actually do that course of action is followed to the end. So therefore, if anyone can save us, and let's hope that those that are close to the president and who would be listening to all the discussion going on in the country now, that they would advise the president that quit whilst you are still ahead. Don't put the country in an invidious position whereby now there is this insurrection to have to remove you, because it is not in the interest of the country that he be in position. So it's not an issue of not liking him, but it's an issue of the seriousness of the crimes that have been committed, that therefore he has to, in good conscience, to vacate that position. Thank you.
Thank you, Tepo. I think those to you that I do not believe that Cyril Ramaphosa has the integrity and the ability as a human being to do what you've just said, to release our country from the shame that he brought upon us and to resign. I've worked in the past with Cyril Ramaphosa at the time when he was the Secretary General of the ANC, so strangely imposed on us at that first national elective conference of the ANC in July 1992 in Durban. And I've seen the man. He's a selfish, self-centered person. He is not concerned about our nation. He's not concerned about the law. He's simply concerned about himself and his own self-gratification. The day when the National Executive Committee of the African National Congress, under the chairpersonship of President Mandela, decided that Cyril Ramaphosa was not going to be the deputy president under President Mandela, and that it was going to be President Thabo Mbeki, I was in Cyril Ramaphosa's office. I watched him kick the chair from behind his desk into the wall and shouting at the top of his voice for the man who has been promoting him as much as he did. Although President Mandela was not in the office, but he was referring to him. He was saying, to hell with Mandela. And then he left and he went into the private sector. This is the kind of human being that we deal with. I saw recently in a News 24 article, Carol Payton said, "Oh, we've been misled. We thought we had a savior. Now he has clay feet." Well, of course, these white monopoly capitalist hacks, including Carol Payton, must not now tell us that they've been misled. They've been misleading the nation. They've been telling lies and fibs and trying to make us believe that there's indeed a new dawn. So the long and the short of it is, we will not see Cyril Ramaphosa resigning. He is not going to take the future of our country and the interests of our people seriously. He's busy with himself. The only way that he will go is if we remove him. And that is why the emphasis on mobilization and making sure that there's a people's upsurge of outrage, an upsurge of action to insist that the right thing must be done and that Cyril Ramaphosa must go and that he must be forced out of office, is the only way that we will see the back of this man. Those that have put him in power want him to stay. The big monopoly capitalists, both internally in South Africa and international as part of imperialism, want him to stay. He's been their project. They have infiltrated him into the African National Congress. He has to deliver on all the money that they've given him and the manner in which they elevated him. They will not simply let him take his jacket and go. We are here not up against one individual human being. We are up against a project of big monopoly capitalism, and he is executing a wide and carefully arranged project. We can see what has been happening yesterday with a new World Bank loan of new billions of rands that is plunging us deeper and deeper into debt, creating for us a situation that even once Ramaphosa goes, whoever gets elected as the new president and the new leaders of this country will be placed in financial straitjacket that will make it almost impossible for us to move. These are the challenges that we are faced with. And ultimately, the message that Comrade Dali Mpofu right at the beginning delivered was very important. It will have to be through the action of us, the people, that we liberate ourselves. And we liberate ourselves from this man who is the personification of continuing exploitation and subjugation of the people of South Africa. Harold, I see you have requested to speak. Harold Furwood, I'm handing the mic over to you.
Good evening, Comrade Carl. Thank you for the opportunity again, and to your co-host. He has particularly spoken really well of the gravity of the situation. You know that a constitutional crisis doesn't give the magnitude of the apocalyptic situation we're in. And for me, and I think whoever of any of the legal fraternity, which I'm very disappointed in for a couple of years now, that have allowed things to trend within the judiciary and seeing how the deterioration of the state in the branches of the state has happened in front of our eyes, because a failed state is not a moment, it's an event, and we are experiencing in real time, and it happens, and the shift of the reality changes. And I mean, you would think that the mass shootings on the Cape Flats is merely just normal gangsterism and criminality, but it has the potential of becoming malicious. That people are becoming, like they say, self-help, and they're becoming. And if you think of what things happened in Syria, who was the malicious? It's the normal underworld gangsters that take up arms. And I mean, Thomas Sagara said that what a soldier without ideology is a criminal, and the vice versa, that a criminal can become a soldier once he, in the absence of ideology, can create one, or a figment of them. So, but my point, what I want to raise here is not just the fact is with this Palapala farm incident and the president's statements on the 4th, which he posted on Twitter, and in official statement, we said that after the incident of the robbery that took place, security improvements were done to all my homes. When he uttered that, and that is on record, it means that the security minister and the public works minister came into that they would have to be, that would come onto their portfolio. Because if the president improved his security, the state security minister would have to have knowledge of it or awareness, because it would affect any protection and security of the person of the presidency. And the defense ministry would also might have to know, because the special forces extraction would know the layout of the difference, or if extra personnel will have to be placed on all these properties, because and so therefore they are basically now become witnesses in this matter, potential investigations, and that would include the current Speaker of Parliament now, which is handling processes which involves the president, when she could possibly be a witness or accomplice to these events. So the fact is that step aside, it's actually now gone to another branch of government, which is the legislature and the National Assembly, that is being headed by somebody that should have known that the president has been doing discreet discussions with another head of state. So where was the ambassadors? Where was Durko? Where was the portfolio oversight committees of Parliament to actually know what the president is and what obligations he's placing the country in through his office with another head of state and their structures and institutions, whether it was clandestine or secret. So therefore there was no oversight done. And the public works, and we know from the Nkandla, we lived through the Nkandla situation and what was imposed on President Jacob Zuma at the time, that Minister President Delil, that who paid for those security upgrades that he just said in his statement on the 4th of June. Whether he paid it out to himself, it should have been that report says that no, the president covered the cost himself and therefore no cost to the state. But it should have been a report and presented to Parliament. So therefore we have a speaker now and various members of the cabinet that are sitting there that seems to have also forgotten the oath of office, and the fact that the fact that they serve on the behest of the president overrides the oath of office to say that I pledge allegiance to the Constitution and the Republic, and they end the words with "so help me God," because that is because you place your entire existence, whether you believe in a deity or not, what you do is say that all that I hold dear, all that I consider good in all the universe, I place my life on that to fulfill the obligations and duties that I pledge here and I lift it to my right hand and say to the whole world and the whole openly and without any reservation. So therefore, the cabinet are now, I mean, are failing us in that regard. Then the other branch of government which I want to bring back, and it's a pity that Senior Counsel Dali Mpofu isn't here, because I would like to challenge him, because he was present when the current Chief Justice was at the JSC interviews, and he was posed a question, and you can go on YouTube and watch his session when he was interviewed, and without any prompting or being compelled to do so, he articulated of how the process of how he became the Commissioner of Inquiry, and how the Chief Justice came into his office very casually, as if they were looking for a DJ to play a gig. And therefore, so he says, no, I will think of a few retired judges. And he actively found and basically conducted interviews of other judges to fulfill whether they are available and whether they fill the criteria of the constitutional process, which is to serve as the Commissioner of Inquiry for the recommendation from the Public Protector, which is for the State Capture Inquiry. And he says he's sitting in a meeting. Now, anybody that knows that any person that participates in the process or actively acts in it can't benefit from it. And it's even more so when he had no place, he should have been exempt. Now, that is grounds for impeachment. And also the judicial misconduct and judicial mispractice, because we know that the fact that the Public Protector Thuli Modisella did the most controversial thing by perverting the separation of powers doctrine. Now, whether the law, our law and our courts allowed it, it would still mean that you would have to do the most conscientious application possible by our high priest, because the Chief Justice Mogoeng is symbolic of the old way that, I mean, the Republic is not just a form of government. It has the model of the old way, the high priest, the interpreters of a law, which we call judges, but they're exactly the same entities as would be the executive, which are the warriors, and Parliament being the peasants. They are not a hierarchical thing. They all have their own value and their own importance in symbolism. And therefore, I call that all three heads of our branches of government of the Republic are potentially that they have to either recuse or step aside or be removed with immediate effect, because they have compromised and they have violated the oath of office. So therefore, I think the focus is just being on President Cyril Ramaphosa, which is damning that he should be. The other two are equally, if we believe in the rule of law and that you're all equal under the rule of law, that the Speaker of Parliament as well as the Chief Justice must also remove themselves. Now the question I pose here, what we do, we have chosen to adopt a Western system of a constitution and republic, which is not African, but we have adopted, meaning that we accepted it as a thing. But maybe it doesn't possibly speak to us. However, it is the system that we've adopted, but we can reject it. However, to reject it would mean, as your co-host said, anarchy, chaos, and but however, till we find another solution, obviously we will have to be faithful to that, because we too, our names are in the preamble that we have chosen it for the time being, because this is just a temporary time in eternity. We have been many forms through time in the past that we've been a nation, because the nation is eternal. So therefore, I put it to you that the focus is not only President Cyril Ramaphosa, however, the Speaker, who is now possibly accessory after the fact, because she's already allowed the budget where she's interfered that the accountability of the president must be held in Parliament. But yes, so she's interfering, obstruction of justice if she's a witness or a potential accomplice. And now with the situation, so I'll put it to Dali Mpofu that what I've said now, and he was present there when the Chief Justice Zondo said those things, and it's on, and it's been recorded. That session was recorded. That he uttered it, and that he was incriminated himself without provocation. That he unduly benefit unlawfully by being appointed as a commissioner of inquiry in the very process where he was trying to find people, and that is unlawful. Thank you, Comrade Carl.
Thank you so much, Harold, and thanks for those points that are well made. I'm happy to see that Comrade Tabu from Democracy in Action has rejoined us. I saw he was online and then he went off. Comrade Tsepo referred to the importance of not only dealing with this matter in terms of our domestic law, but also internationally. And I know that Democracy in Action has been working on a number of steps that they intend to undertake. I see a number of you are sending up your hands time after time. Obviously, it's frustrating to wait so long. I will try to give as many of you as possible an opportunity to still speak, although it is already 9:30 in the evening. But let me now hand the mic over to Comrade Tabu at Democracy in Action.
Good evening, Comrade Carl. Good evening to your co-host, Mr. Tsepo. Good evening to all the speakers, and we are forever grateful for the free counsel from the People's Advocate, Mr. Dali Mpofu. An official complaint with the Human Rights Commission against the president and his head of protection unit, that Mr. Wali Rode. So we've launched that application with the Human Rights Commission on basis that those people were held against their will and they were tortured, and also they had to give evidence under the very first one will be that people were arrested vigilante style. I mean, we have a president that is so into vigilantism that he even uses that vigilantism to solve crime at his own private residence without reporting that matter to the SAPS. So those are some of the issues that we are dealing with. We had a pleasure also to speak to the FBI in the American Embassy in Pretoria. He's a gentleman there who refused to give us his name, but he also refused again that we get hold of the FBI attaché here in South Africa so that we can lodge the matter with them, since it involves dollars. So we are still looking at contacting the FBI in the US, and hopefully there we might get some assistance, or we might get some happiness, and this matter is taken into consideration. Of course, we do all of this to go outside the country because seemingly the president is currently above every one of us, and is also above the law in this country, and there are no person that includes the SAPS, the Hawks, and the NPA that are willing to charge him, and specifically after he has admitted to some of the matters that Mr. Arthur Fraser has laid complaint against him. So we are very concerned that there aren't any law enforcement agencies that are willing to deal with this matter, except of course for the public protector, who has since been suspended because of she has raised her hand and said, no, I am willing to look at this matter. Here's 31 questions. Please answer them, and so that we can investigate this matter. Of course, we all know that a day later, the public protector was suspended. So it's pretty much clear that the public protector was suspended because of the Palapala farm gate issue. So we are very disappointed as a civil society organization that we have a president that, as he is currently tainted and he is currently being accused of a crime that he himself has admitted to, that he still has a nerve to suspend the sitting public protector. So we are very concerned about that. But the other avenue that we are looking at, Comrade Carl, is that there's, in terms of our constitution, there's a citizen arrest that we, as the citizen of this country, we can take into consideration into dealing with this matter. Since there isn't anyone who's willing to arrest the sitting president, I think the members of the society and all of us that we are gathered here today, and many others that have interest in this matter, we can use that process in terms of our constitution, provided for in our constitution, to arrest the president and take him really to the nearest police station to be charged accordingly, because this is the crimes that he himself has admitted to have done. So I think that will be, as we discuss here in this platform and other platforms, I think that should be one of our focus, that as a citizen of the country, as we answer the question, what can be done, that's one of the things that we can do to arrest the president, because money laundering and other crimes that he's been accused and that he has accepted that he has committed them, they are part, or we are able, as part of the citizen arrest, to arrest him. So that will be on the person of the president. But I would also like to respond to Khoisan, who was asking a question that after Cyril Ramaphosa, then who? I think that will be very incorrect of all of us to sit around this platform and discuss now who is next. I mean, whoever who comes after the president should be a person of high integrity. That's what we are looking for. We are not going to sit around here and discuss a president that has, or a president that is accused of everything that he has done, and then we ask the question, who's next? No, we are not going to do that. We must remove him, and even if it means that we do not have any other president after him, we go on election, whatever the cause may be, we must just remove this sitting president. That's it. We are not even going to entertain the question whether it's going to be Didi Mabuza, or whether it's going to be Karl Niehaus, or it's going to be whoever from the ANC. We are not going to do that. Our duty is to protect the republic, and that duty is to say that we must fight against criminality in whatever form that we find ourselves in. And if the president, for that matter, is guilty of a crime, then we must remove him and not ask a question, who else? He is not the only president that we can choose, or is not the only person that is available in this country that is qualified to be a president. There's a whole lot of people, a whole host of people that we can choose from. So we must not even ask that question. But of course, as soon as we remove him, we must also make sure that the next president that is going to come, as much as we speak about the state capture by the former government, we must also speak about the state capture by the current government. So we must make sure that the next president of Stellenbosch mafia. So we must protect the republic again. We must protect the president again, that the president is specifically by white monopoly capitalists. So that should be our duty. So the institutional. So we must as well, as soon as we deal with this president, we must deal with the second person will be Mr. Pravin Gordhan, but the third person will be Mr. Zondo, assisted by Dustin Mlambo from Pretoria High Court. So those are the people that mostly we must deal with, and perhaps when the time is right and when the time is good, we can have a discussion about our parliamentary system or our constitutional democracy versus the parliamentary democracy, and what is the best. Because I think at the moment we are just focusing on the presidency, but our problems are far much deeper than just the presidency and everything else that is happening in that democracy. But it involves also that we've got parliamentarians that were voted by the people, and the same parliamentarians cannot exercise their power fully, because if you take a decision in parliament, that decision can be vetoed somewhere else in the constitutional court. So those are some of the matters that in good time we must discuss as this country, that which of the two systems better fits us as a country. But yes, our our contribution tonight and our contribution to what is currently happening in our political discourse is that we are busy looking at different avenues that to make sure that the president is held accountable, and him and his head of security. I think Dali Mpofu has spoken at length about the crime that happened there and the crimes that the president has accepted to. So we do not want to go deeper in everything that has happened. Safe to say that there was crimes that took place in that farm, and all those crimes are well documented, and some of the people have accepted. And so now we must really force the NPA and the SAPS, the Hawks, to act against all these criminals that were involved there, including the president, and failure to do that, we the citizen must take over. So for us, that is really at the core of the matter. But yes, to go back to that point, this is not a time to ask who is next. The time is to remove a sitting criminal from the presidency. That is the time. This is the time that we must. This is the time that we must discuss that, and everything else will come after. And I think for us as an organization, it will be very unfortunate we sit around this space and discuss that even the person of Deputy President Mr. Titi Mabuza is not qualified or is not a right person to take over. I think it would be very wrong of us to do that, because essentially, if Titi Mabuza can be the deputy president of the country, it means that he can be the president of the country. So if we have, as a nation, as a country, as people, we know something that that disqualifies him to be a sitting deputy president, and we are quiet about it, and all of us, it means that we are guilty, and all of us, perhaps we should not even be talking about this. But yes, either Titi or whoever wants to come in, it's fine, as long as it's not a sitting criminal. Thank you very much, Mr. Carl, and everyone else.
Thank you, Thabo. I think we should express our gratitude to Democracy in Action for both the international steps that you are taking in terms of international law, and also the local steps that you are taking. With reference to the issue of a citizen's arrest, it is evidently something that we should keep in our minds. And evidently, if any of us are able to carry out such an arrest, I hope we have the courage to do so. I personally, if I get close enough to Cyril Ramaphosa, I will definitely try to carry out a citizen's arrest and get him to the closest police station wherever he is and get him processed and charged, because that is what he deserves in terms of the legal situation that he finds himself in. And as Thabo has indicated, what he, by his own unwise words, has already admitted that he had done. So yes, we need to take action. We need to mobilize. We need to have courage. I have received a request from Khatsheni to be given an opportunity to speak. He has been raising his hand for quite some time, and I now hand the mic over to him.
Thank you, Uncle Carl. Good evening to you and everyone who's in the space. Firstly, I would like to commend you for opening this platform for the citizens of the country to come out in numbers and engage. You know, I've seen some of the spaces, they don't have such numbers. It shows that you've opened the platform for everyone to come and engage. The first point that I want to make is in reference to media. First of all, I would like to say this. You know, in this country, the mainstream, we have a mainstream media that is I don't know whether it's in a campaign of dividing the society. You know, we've seen before that they've reported a lot about certain individuals. They even made some judgments about certain individuals, whereby they even created a sense that some of the individuals are guilty without being tested in a court of law. You know, I can make many examples. You know, so some of the people are just exposed to us, or the reports that are given to the communities, like those people are saint, they are being praised, they are being defended, and all those things. So I've seen that. Then the level of nepotism within media is the one that is going to make the society itself to be divided, because I believe that media should be the one that is protecting, especially the constitution. We've seen them even before campaigning and saying to us that they are protecting the constitution, but seemingly at the current moment we've seen a trend of mainstream media playing into a political fictionalism of the ANC, whereby they become defenders of certain individuals who are said to have committed a crime. You know, and that attitude is going to divide the nation if we are not alert enough. It's going to divide the nation, and we may experience a civil war because of media. You know, and I believe that at a certain point we need to have our own media that speaks to our own pan-Africanist language. You know, we had that media, and it was us again who played a role in ensuring that that media platform was removed from a multi-choice. You know, so to me, actually, it's a learning curve for us to say we should not be mobilized easily to be against something that is very, very good for us. I remember when ANN7 was in existence. You know, we had some option. You know, we had some option to follow. You know, and ANN7 would go even to the communities to engage community members. You know, but now we are having this mainstream media. They're writing whatever they want to write. Right now, we're having this case of the president. We've seen some of the media institutions coming up,
questioning Arthur Fraser, questioning his credibility, and trying to create stories around his own character as a person, So we need to guide against that. Even as we played a part, we had a good media platform whereby even the community was being attended to. They shared their views, and during the time it was under President Zuma. The worst thing, it was under President Zuma, who was being labeled as this person who's not a democratical person. But at the time, ANN7, when it was in existence and functioning, ANN7 would go to community members. They used to express their own views about issues, So we need to work towards building such a media platform, because what we have right now is just institutions of propaganda, actually, because these people, they just even invite some political analysts, who are not going to be challenged. They say whatever on those television platforms. They say whatever without being challenged. I so wish that one day we have a space whereby those political analysts, they are being brought in to be exposed to the community at large, because I refer to these spaces as a community at large, because everyone has a voice. Even myself, I never thought that I'll be here engaging with people, with certain people, but I can see that the spaces are such platforms whereby we engage. Even us at a certain level, we are able to come in and engage. I so wish that those political analysts who always speak and write all these things that they are writing, they can come out and host these spaces whereby we can engage. Another issue that I want to raise, Uncle Carl, is an issue of the ANC. I think you and other elders within the ANC, you need to teach the culture of the ANC. You need to teach the values and the principles of the ANC to the latter. It should not be a matter of spaces. You should be holding seminars. You should be going to the communities and try to engage the youth, to understand the principles of the ANC, to understand the principle actually of Pan-Africanism, because ANC was built under the norm of Pan-Africanism. For it to be a party that stands, it was built on such a norm of Pan-Africanism. So I think you as elders within the party, you need to try and stretch, the Pan-Africanist ideology to the communities, so that young people will understand. Because at this current moment, we have young people who are active in alcohol. Like alcohol is the one leading a thing that is happening. I'm a youth, even myself. I'm falling under the youth. I'm seeing these things that are happening. That there's no political activism. Activism. Actually, I mean to say, there's no political activism, and it becomes a problem at the end of the day, because even elders, it's like, now you are too focused on this thing of nationalism. We are not saying you should not caution wrongdoings of certain leaders, but you need to stretch, the educational principle to say it goes to the communities, whereby these young people they get to be engaged on such matters. So when it comes to ANC principles, they link with Pan-Africanist. So you need to work on such issues. Then I want to come to the issue of
yeah, Hatsini, I think it's time for you to begin to wind up. You're also not entirely staying on topic. I don't want to muzzle you, but at the same time, there's a large number of people who are requesting to speak, and it is 10 to 10 in the evening. So if you can wind up, it will be highly appreciated.
Yes, I just wanted to come to this one, the main one now of step aside. I just wonder if this issue of the president goes to court. how is it going to defend it? I just wonder how is he going to defend it, because people like Zweli Mkhize, they chose to move to step aside when some of the cases against them were brought in. So I just wonder how is he going to defend it? If it becomes successful in the court of law, is it that the ANC is going to go back and say people like the Secretary General of the ANC is going to come back? It's just that I don't know how it's going to be handled. If the court says the step aside a thing, it doesn't happen, even at government level, because I think that if at governmental level it works or it doesn't work, it should not work even in the ANC itself, because if they say in the court level is unconstitutional, it means that even within the ANC is unconstitutional. That is what I wanted to say, actually.
Thank you. We are 10 to 10 now. I'm going to take the liberty to allow those of you who are on this platform up to 10 o'clock to speak. Then I'm going to ask my co-host Sepu Khadima to come in, give his input, and after that I will end this conversation. So unfortunately, like previously, it will not be possible for everyone to participate. I regret that, but unfortunately, because of the large numbers of people who do participate, we are unable to allow everyone to speak. I'm really trying my best to give as many people as possible an opportunity to speak. I'm now giving the opportunity to I Am Tsepei, who has requested to speak. The mic is yours. You can proceed. For some reason, Tsepei is not coming in to speak, although I can see that the mic has been unmuted. Unfortunately, we cannot wait. I'm going to ask Matezi to join us and take the mic.
Thank you, Comrade Carl.
No, Moses, I didn't acknowledge you. I say Matezi. So can I please have the person that I've acknowledged to speak? Okay, Matezi is also not taking up. Moses, you can speak now. Moses Pala.
Comrade Carl, thank you for the opportunity. Good evening to yourself, co-host, and the listeners on the platform. I must appreciate this platform, Comrade Carl, and I think it's one of the exciting and the greatest platform we have to vent our issues. But I must also say in the same note, Comrade Carl, that I think we're not angry enough as Black people, especially, and I'll tell you why. It's a serious indictment without necessarily diminishing your own platform or your own integrity and the whole credentials in the movement. That a program such as this will be led by yourself as a white person, Comrade Carl. It shows that Black people are not angry enough to liberate ourselves. But we must appreciate you for coming up with this. Having said that, I think a lot has been said, Comrade Carl. I don't want to belabor what has been said already. A lot has been said, and I don't want to deduct what has been said by my comrades on the platform. Safe to say, I think I want to suggest that there be some recommendations, and I want to come up with about 3 recommendations moving forward. One, Comrade Carl, that what we should do, each one of us on the platform who believe in the cause that we've been discussing, that we should go out and mobilize as many people as possible to come onto the platform, and we should have this platform perhaps a follow-up sometime next week. An indicator of how many people would have come to the platform next week would then begin to tell us the milestone and the readiness for us to hit the ground. And that indicator should therefore come with some form of it to begin to send of course, depending on how many people would have mobilized to come on the platform, to begin to tell, to indicate to members and every audience entries as to when we can then begin to go to the ground and hold the state hostage, and make sure that in all 9 provinces at the same time, nothing moves. We could even go as far as mobilizing and radicalizing our people in the diaspora in Namibia. I see they are very busy. They could also do the same, and make sure that we stage the biggest protest ever, and to make sure that what we seek to happen does happen. And I think, we should, and I want to stress this enough, Comrade Carl, that we should have a follow-up on this topic with more numbers. That will then begin to indicate to us our readiness to hit the ground. That is my contribution. And I think there's a lot of things that I would have wanted to say, but time is against us. I would leave it there, Comrade Carl. Thank you.
Thank you, Comrade Moses. I think that was a very, very helpful contribution. My intention is, I'm just going to make 1 or 2 inquiries quickly while other speakers are still on, but my intention is to make some announcement around that proposal of yours at the end of this Twitter Spaces conversation. I'm now going to give an opportunity to Marchesi, who didn't respond when I gave the mic, but has now requested again to speak. So I do want to give that opportunity. I hope this time it will work out. Marchesi.
Thank you so much, Comrade Carl. Apologies about that. I think I had network problems. I think for me, obviously I won't be talking about what the previous speaker spoke about, but I think for me, our problem in the ANC started when there was a death in internal democracy. I mean, in Gauteng, when we went to the list conference, there was no voting. There was an agreement that there's no need to vote. We can just, the leadership can decide on the list. That was the first thing. And I feel like when CR came in, that's when this whole thing started. The thing of, even when we are in conference mode, it seems so personal and so vindictive. And so we need to get people out in order to be able to contest space. We can't contest space like how we used to, you know, where you'd have people that are on an opposing side and another side, and then we contest space and democracy prevails. Now there's court cases, there's suspensions. For me personally, I'll speak about my case. We had a regional conference in Johannesburg, and there was nominations and all of that. When we had to go to a branch general meeting, I received a letter that says I was suspended on the day of the BBGM. And you know how temporary suspension works. You have to let people, the person that is suspended know, and they have 48 hours to respond. None of that was done. Instead, there were bouncers at our BBGM. Bouncers that literally picked me up and threw me out of the meeting. So as a woman, it's traumatizing because of the climate that we live in South Africa. But also to think that this is supposed to be your safe space. The ANC is supposed to be your safe space. This is a space where progressives exist. And, you know, contestation of ideas exists and it's welcomed. But I feel like that's no longer the case. We had our conference. At the conference, I wasn't allowed in. Again, there were bouncers that are commissioned by the regional secretary, who was also contesting to be the chairperson of the region. When they read out the nominations, I was part of the nominated people. And then there was someone that said, no, this person is suspended and wasn't eligible to be voted for. So what I'm saying to you now is that our problem in the ANC, which is something that we boasted for so long, that the biggest thing or that we can celebrate as the ANC is that we're able to renew ourselves through our internal democracy, and that doesn't exist. The fights are dirtier, and I think we need to be clear now with our intentions. We need to be welcoming of different ideas, and we need to fight and make sure that people that are saying people must step aside, but when it comes to them, they want us to trust their word, that they won't interfere in their investigations, because we must just trust that they have integrity, are problematic, and we need to root them out. We need to fight this demon that exists within the ANC, because the ANC people rely on the ANC. People's livelihoods depend on the ANC. People's lives depend on the ANC. So I say we need to come together, develop documents, develop a clear program of action on how we can bring back the ANC to its glorious position. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to wind up now by giving Sikelo Gumede an opportunity to speak. And after that, I'm going to ask Tsepo Khadima to come in. And as I've said, once Tsepo had given us his input, which is always very valuable and helping us to move forward with direction, I will then summarize, and also I'm going to make an announcement with regards to some of the requests that have been made here and how we're going to make these Twitter spaces tailor-fit in order to address those requests. Sikelo, I can hear you've already unmuted your mic. The mic is yours.
Thank you, Carl, and good evening to everyone. I'm going to be very brief. By first of all, appreciating the opportunity and the platform. It's been very interactive since it started. First of all, I'm going to be very brief. Number one, I'm just going to just, emphasize the fact that we are all South Africans, and these platforms brings us together regardless of our, our political affiliation, whatsoever. At this point in time as South Africans, it actually feels to me it doesn't matter, which political affiliation you're coming from or what ideology you're coming from. I think we all are wanting one common thing: to have a better South Africa, to have a better future, and that is what needs to be at the core of our discussion. And I appreciate the inputs that have been shared to that effect. And just like Moses said, I think as South Africans we need to be action based. We need to think about the future. We need to think 20, 50 years to come, and from that perspective, and start strategizing and be driven by actions. And I love what Moses just shared in terms of what can we do in a short term. In a short term, our voice can be heard as a first step, where we go on the street and have a massive march, to demand the president to step down and to account. And I think that on its own will be set a tone in South Africa to say we, people of South Africa, are taking charge and are taking responsibility for our future. Some of us, we honestly, fellow South Africans, we do not care about so many things that sometimes drags us. The politics and this and that. All we want a better future. We want a government that is free of corruption. And I think it's high time that we take responsibility of our future, each and every one of us. It doesn't matter which political affiliation you're coming from. That is why I commend Carl for giving us this platform. I don't feel like I need to identify, with any political party or anything, as I'm in this platform. But I feel like I'm a South African, and that's what matters the most, and that's what should count the most, to say we are all South Africans and we want a better future. So I'm just emphasizing the points that Moses shared, to say I'm looking forward to the announcement that's going to come, and I'm counting myself to be part of the march, and I'm willing to participate in any planning whatsoever to get this to make this a success. And I want to assure Moses as well and many others to say, as much as there's 2,000 of us here, there's actually a lot of South Africans who care, who really would love to join this. They may not appear here on Twitter Space, but I'm definitely sure that they will be part of this movement, because we are all fed up, we are all tired, and we want change. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Celo. I'm now handing over to Tsepo Khadima to give us his input, and then I will wind up tonight's Twitter Spaces. Tsepo, the mic is yours. Tsepo, can you hear us? I see that there seemed to be a problem for you to participate. It seems like the same old problem that we had at the middle of this conversation when you were not able to activate your mic and participate in the discussion. Do you want to try again, or shall we move on? Well, unfortunately, Tsepo is evidently not able to join us at this stage. It is one of my frustrations that this platform, Twitter Spaces platform, is not as stable as I would like it to be. So one has to deal with the issue of wondering sometimes whether it is sabotage and other times whether it is just the limitations of the technology. Unfortunately, that is also the problem that we were faced with regards to Comrade Tony Yengeni. And evidently, we would have greatly benefited from the opportunity to listen to Comrade Tony when he was beginning to give us his main input. And it is in that context that I want to make an announcement about how we want to deal with the upcoming Twitter Space, which is this coming Sunday, and which will start at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I had lined up the ambassador from Russia to join us for that Twitter Space. Having listened to the responses that I received tonight and the depth and the emotions that come out of this conversation, and at the same time also the needs that people have expressed for proper mobilization, I've decided to request the Russian ambassador to stand 1 week back and to join us in a week's time from now, so that we can open this Twitter Space for coming Sunday to discuss specifically the issues around the Palapala farm, but specifically the issues around the need to remove President Cyril Ramaphosa and those around him who are sustaining and keeping him in power, from power. In that context, I will engage with Comrade Tony Yengeni at the end of this Twitter Spaces conversation and ask him to join us again on Sunday. And we will try to make arrangements to ensure that Comrade Tony will be able to stay online and participate. I will also approach one or two other persons in our society of significance, and I'm deliberately phrasing it like this because at this stage I haven't had the opportunity to speak to them. So I will ask them to join us, and the conversation will be practically orientated. It will be about how do we mobilize ourselves in order to achieve the objective that we have set out tonight so clearly. We do not need to go back on ground that we have already covered. We do not need to again establish that President Cyril Ramaphosa has contravened the law. We do not need to establish that it's both international and local legislation that has been broken. We also do not need, I think, to ask ourselves anymore whether President Ramaphosa will of his own volition go, because the chances of that, as far as I am concerned, and as I've said to you, I've worked with the man, I know him fairly well, is zero. So if it is zero for him to decide on his own volition to go, We need to develop a plan of action in order to make sure that he will go and that those around him who sustain the current system and who sustain the current levels of exploitation and illegality have to go. So that will be the plan for coming Sunday. A wide-ranging but very clear and directed conversation at practical steps on how to mobilize. We have tried to put out a toolkit for mobilization over this week. In that toolkit, there were some suggestions on how to deal with social media, what hashtags to use to trend. Also, there was a suggestion that we should go to our local police stations and at our local police stations file supporting cases and affidavits to the main case that had been laid by Arthur Fraser on the 1st of June at the Rosebank police station. Now, I see there had been questions about that action. Some people said, but what is the purpose of continuing to repeat the same charges? That is not the issue. We are telling the police by being present at those police stations in our numbers that we will not allow them to sweep this very critical issue under the carpet. We are telling them that we want to be co-involved in this whole legal case, that we want to be informed about the progress of the case, and that we will keep them on their toes and continue to monitor what they are doing. So if we can have, and really I think it will be effective, if we can have large numbers of people going to local police stations, laying charges with regards to abduction, with regards to money laundering, with regards to general criminality and torture that has been carried out at the Palapala farm, that will be a very, very powerful message, both in terms of what it tells the police, but imagine also the power of large and long queues of people standing and patiently waiting to lay their charges, to register their supporting affidavits at their local police stations. So please, if you can muster the energy and the time to do so, please do so. Yes, I agree also that we need to have a mass mobilization of a huge rally, a rally of hundreds of thousands of people. We need to work towards that. It cannot be a flash in the pan. And I hope that the discussions that we will be able to have on this Twitter space coming Sunday from 5 o'clock onwards will help to give us direction there. But of course, that will have to be organizational, it have to be carefully planned, and it will not be possible to do all of that on a Twitter space. Twitter space is not made for that. So we will work around the Twitter space engagement and at the same time engage organizationally with many other structures. I want to announce also that next Wednesday, now not this Sunday we're talking about President Ramaphosa and we talk practical action on how to ensure that this man will leave and that those around him will leave. But next Wednesday, I've now got a firm confirmation that our public protector will join us for a wide-ranging conversation about her work that she had done, also about the action that President Ramaphosa had taken against her to suspend her at that very critical moment when she sent him those very incisive 32 questions and the day after she was suspended. The timing is not coincidental. And then also we will be moving the next Sunday then to the Twitter space with the Russian ambassador. Tomorrow is June the 16th. It is our Youth Day. I'm sad to say that I think there's very little that we can celebrate in terms of what our youth are experiencing. Our youth are living under a dark cloud of economic deprivation, of unemployment, of deepening poverty. Even those of them who have had the opportunity to study and get some qualifications are unable to get work. This afternoon, I conducted an interview with Comrade Mervyn Dirks and also with a comrade, and I very specifically chose this comrade, part of the ANC Youth League, but very involved in local action in his Moses Mabhida region. He's part of the regional task team there, Comrade Spu Mkhize. I want to encourage you to listen to that conversation that I had with him, which is going to be broadcast tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock on my Crosshairs YouTube channel. The heading of that conversation, as always, is Mpangazita in Conversation. And in this instance, it is then in conversation with Mervyn Dirks and with Spu Mkhize. I now want to wind up, and you will have heard at the beginning of this Twitter Spaces conversation, I played Black President, My Black President by Brenda Fassie. And I did that so deliberately because that was from a period of euphoria. It was from a period of hope. So many of us have seen that hope waning. And I hope and want us to hope for a future where we once again will have a Black president that we will truly be proud of, and a government that cares for our people. Our people sacrificed so much for the liberation that they hoped for. It cannot be just some kind of mist on the horizon. We have to make it work. We have to ensure that our people, and especially our young people, will have a future. That future is only possible once Cyril Ramaphosa is gone. So as I've said the previous evening when I said goodnight to you, don't go and sleep with calmness in your heart. Go and sleep with anger and unrest, and join us again on Sunday, where we will talk practically how we get rid of Cyril Ramaphosa and his gang. And with those words, I thank Tsepo Khadima, I thank Advocate Dali Mpofu, and I thank Comrade Tony Yengeni for their invaluable participations in this evening's Twitter Space conversation. And especially my thanks to all of you who have dedicated more than 3 hours of this evening to this important discussion. I'm looking forward to seeing many thousands more people coming Sunday joining us. We've got a job in front of us. We've got to get rid of a